Welcome to Continuum COMiX Creative Corner, where we invite creators into the continuum to explore their creations and their creative journey. With us today, we have Sam Johnson, who does Geek Girl, but we want to talk more than just Geek Girl today. Sam, welcome to the program. Let me switch us around so you can be the bigger guy in the screen. There we go. Sam, first tell people how they can follow you, where they can follow you.
Okay, well, I've got multiple Facebooks, so if you search Sam Johnson on Facebook, we're going to have mutual friends probably, because everyone that's into comics I add. So that's a good one. Twitter is DA Sam Johnson, or G Kickstarter for the Geek Girl Kickstarter. And there's also Sam Johnson COMiX on Instagram.
All right. And before we get into what you're here to talk to about, part two today of Geek Girl, which is a great series, I want to go a little bit back. You're not obviously from America. We can hear that just by how you're speaking. Where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from London in England, and then I've moved to Sheffield, which is the northeast. Been living here for most of my life now.
All right. And how did you become a comic book fan? Because like in America, we had the newsstands. We saw comics at our newspaper stands. How was it in England? How did you get into comics?
Same thing. I mean, what they used to do in England was, back in the day, they'd have like a big stack, like every month. You just get like a big, all the Marvels virtually, and then another week you get like all the DCs. So that's how I got into them as a kid, and I used to buy like, just about all of the Marvels.
And what was it about comic books for you personally that drew you in? Because there's always like an origin story for you as a fan. Where was that origin story? Was it a certain comic? Was it a certain character?
I couldn't really pinpoint one thing, but one of the things that I really enjoy about comics is, which is now what you get with the Marvel TV and films as well, is the shared universe thing. So like Secret Wars was a big deal. I think that was the first time I'd seen, something like that, which now is obviously commonplace. But yeah, the crossover element, the shared universe, is something that really appeals to me, and something I do with my own stuff as well. So I think, yeah, I mean, just, Marvel in general is what drew me in, but specifically comics, that element is something I find very appealing.
And when it comes to comics themselves, I know that you have a female character that's actually a very interesting character, and I can't wait to talk about it in our second part. But for you, is it character first? Is it story first? Is it art first? What would you say is your biggest draw? Because I know for everyone there's kind of a difference. For me, example, it's about characters. Give me good characters, I'll follow a story.
Yeah, I mean, the characters are the most important thing. But I think if you're talking about a new book, if you're checking it out, the art is really important. I think when a book's been going a while and they've changed the artist, then that's okay. But I think as an initial draw, it's very important for the art to, have that, right, I want to read, I want to see more of this.
That makes sense. And speaking about that, were there any creative influences as you were, well, let's actually ask that. What made you take that step from fan to creator, actually? What was that moment that you were like, you know what, I want to do more than read comics. I want to create them. So
it was when I was at the age when I decided I wanted to write. I didn't know like what kind of thing I would necessarily write, but I was in a Virgin Megastore. They had a comic section. This was after I kind of moved away from comics in my teenage years, and then it caught my eye. Rob Liefeld's stuff on New Mutants, bringing Cable and Deadpool. That got me back into them. And then following that, there was the Image Comics launch, which obviously there was that crossover element from New Mutants and X-Force and Liefeld to the Image. And the Image Comics run some talent searches where you could submit pitches for Image ideas, Image character ideas. I did that. And then Wizard Comics magazine ran one where you could pitch Malibu comics ideas. And I did that, and I came joint second in that. And this basically, this was the sort of, these were just like one-page outlines with maybe a few sample strip pages, but that got me hooked. And it's like, right, this is what I want to do.
Have you ever had a chance to meet Roland Mann? He was actually part of Malibu.
No, I haven't. No, Malibu. The time I was sort of aware of it was when it was, sort of engulfed by Marvel and then kind of disappeared.
Yeah, that's basically that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Now, coming up, you had to have influences. You mentioned Deadpool and Cable. Who would you say creatively you kind of were like, I want to know who this writer is or this artist is, that made you stop just being a fan of the work but started looking at the people? And did you follow them? Is there anyone from the past you've read up on that has influenced your career?
I think, Grant Morrison, I always reference his run on Doom Patrol as my biggest influence. We bring the weirdness in Geek Girl. Peter David as well. I think Brian Michael Bendis became like a kind of superstar is not the term, but Brian Michael Bendis was very much, his work was Brian Michael Bendis. You kind of, it's either for you or it's not. And like Jessica Jones, I mean the TV show I love. So that all of his stuff. I mean, I'm not a big DC person, so I haven't read his DC stuff. But like everything he did for Marvel was clearly, this is Brian Michael Bendis.
Yeah, and when it comes to that, are you someone who has gone as far as to follow him to DC? Because I know I heard you say that you were a big Marvel fan. But when Bendis went over to DC, were you like, well, let me go see what he does with Superman? Did that make you interested as a fan?
No. I mean, going back to what you were saying about what gets you on board with the comics, the characters are, the example I was given about the artist being, such a draw is when you've been introduced to something new. If you're familiar with the characters already, and they've been going a long time, I think, like, there's certain characters, certain comics I'm going to more or less follow, irrespective of who the creators are, and there's certain superheroes that don't appeal to me, such as Superman. Sorry, Granda, Geek Girl artist C. Granda loves Superman to the degree that he did at one point, he for 52 days posted him wearing one different Superman t-shirt every day. He loves him. I don't get it. So Brian Michael Bendis writing Superman did not make me read Superman, just the same as Grant Morrison writing Superman didn't either.
Oh, that's interesting. And there's nothing wrong with that, because our fan base, I think, is so connected to who we become as creators, and it draws into us and it actually influences us. I know people who have Marvel tattoos. I have Marvel and DC tattoos, so I go both ways. But
I'm not like opposed to. I mean, Doom Patrol is. I love Doom Patrol, but the general, your Justice League type versus your Avengers, I don't connect with DC superheroes so much.
So let me ask you, as a Doom Patrol fan, Doom Patrol or X-Men, who wore it better?
The thing is, it's like that. What really got me into Doom Patrol was when it got really weird with, it was originally Rachel Pollack who followed Grant Morrison, and then I went back to the Grant Morrison runs. So those aren't that comparable to Doom Patrol. I think the early stuff is, you can see parallels, but you can also see parallels between Fantastic Four and Doom Patrol. But I think the evolution of them now is, you read a Doom Patrol comic, you read an X-Men comic, the worlds apart.
All right. Now, this is probably the most important question, not only that I can ask you as a creator, but one that you have to answer for yourself. What are your goals within this industry, and what do you seek to actually achieve during your tenure within this comic book industry? What does Sam Johnson want to leave behind when someone's writing your autobiography?
So, I mean, I'm building a universe. As you say, we're not going to talk too much on Geek Girl in this part, so I'll come back to that. But like I said, going in the origins and we get into comics, I like the shared universe thing. So, like, for example, in Geek Girl, we had Mark Darden's character Guano Guy crossover into it, which was really fun. And like that was just going to be a sort of cameo, and I ended up developing with him to make it a bigger thing. So I enjoy that. Also, I mean, I have aspirations to work on Deadpool. I always have. I love Deadpool, but I don't feel like I'm at the level where that's a realistic proposition at this time. Yeah, that's in terms of long-term goals. It's, you know, I want sort of 1 foot in the indie field and 1 foot in 1 foot up Deadpool's ass, for less weird way of putting it.
Let me ask you, part of that aspiration, is any of it seeing Geek Girl adapted into a different media? We'll talk about the comic in part 2, but do you want to see her on a big screen? Would you like to see a cartoon like it? Because Invincible has changed the game. This has proven that you can make a cartoon out of a comic book that is absolutely compelling. So it's no longer you have to have a movie to be taken seriously. I think Invincible has changed that. So now that we're in this different world, would you rather see it as a comic book, a movie? Do you want to see it merchandised? Like, what are your ultimate goals? Forget being realistic. Let's talk as fans of our own work, because we start as a fan of our own work. Where do you want to see Geek Girl and your creations? Beyond that, of course, we see you have other characters, including the Almighties, which I've never heard you talk about actually until I saw it there. So what do you want to see with these creations of yours?
So, I mean, with Geek Girl, since writing because there was an initial mini series and then we followed up with the ongoing, and the mini series I always thought had like that arc was quite a good fit for cinema. So I've always had in mind live action movie based. I mean, the thing is, when you make movies of comics and of make TV shows of them, that it's not the same story, but that is like the villain Lightning Storm, the whole thing with that, like I had a soundtrack in mind for that. So that would be, if I was aiming for an entry point into other media with Geek Girl, that would be that, a movie based around the first miniseries. Beyond that, it wouldn't necessarily have to be movies, TV shows. I mean, I'm loving what Marvel are doing. WandaVision I thought was superb. And, that has become much more of a thing now. So, yeah, and then merchandise, obviously. I mean, I'm looking, I'm continually building the audience for Geek Girl. I want to get to a point fundamentally, before any of that stuff, where it's just like feasible for me to be like, right, I'm in a position now with this, the audience is there enough that I can do this for as long as I want, because I've got lots of ideas that I want to do.
All right, merchandising wise, forget an action figure because that's easy. Give me something interesting that you'd like to see Geek Girl have. Maybe a sorority towel or yoga, like really think outside the box. Give me something fun.
I mean, it's not something I've given a great deal of thought about. What would be kind of fun would be we're setting up in the new issues this character Mean Girl, who's like a tech wielding valley girl, and she's got this phone that can shoot rainbows into people's eyes that makes them hallucinate being attacked by unicorns while listening to a Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande mashup. It might be quite cool to have a Mean Girl phone.
That would be, if it like projected rainbows onto the wall.
Yeah, no, that's something. I mean, as I say, this is a character that I've just introduced, but like as she says, it's like Mean Girl versus Geek Girl. How has this not happened sooner? So there's a potential there for this to become the arch nemesis of Geek Girl, depending on how things play. But I really enjoy writing the character, so that's something I'm looking at, and yeah. And it is. It's just like how has this not happened sooner? Mean Girl versus Geek Girl. Boom.
That's true. I look forward to it. We're gonna break off now. This is part 1. Make sure you check out part 2, where we're gonna deep dive into Geek Girl and see what she's into, and of course that big crossover that you guys are doing. And we're gonna talk about how much of an influence that's gonna have in future storytelling. So make sure you check in with the second part of this interview. So we'll see you there.
Continuum COMiX is more than a comic series, more than an LLC, more than an idea. It is a bridge to connect all creators of all levels and unite them in creation and conversation. while putting out content to entertain fans and inviting everyone in to the Continuum.
The